Hello, my name is Chetana Movva. I go to Middleton High School in Tampa, Florida, and today I will be presenting on the intersectionality between gun violence and global health, and how there really is two sides to the coin. I'm currently a rising senior and care deeply about bringing change to the community around me. This has sparked my interest in medicine and global health, and I've been able to bring that into my daily activities as a passionate student advocate. In addition to participating in HOSA, starting my own Women in Medicine Club at school, and interning for the cause of pediatric cancer awareness, I've been involved in Students Demand Action since the beginning of high school, and have since then learned more about activism and gun violence in particular. As a co-president of Tampa Demands Action this year, this summer we are hosting a summer camp for gun violence survivors and community advocates that will allow students to grow and create change within their own communities. While planning this summer camp, however, a particular trend came to my attention: the relationship between gun violence and global health, and why that relationship is so important. The topic of gun violence has two distinct impacts on the global community. One that is talked about in the news: the mass shootings, the unrestricted gun accessibility, and the images and videos of people with guns shooting into communities as hate crimes, or moreover, crimes against humanity. But this side of the coin, millions of people are able to see the atrocities of gun violence, and this plays a major role in awareness and building community. However, the issue that often escapes our view is gun violence playing a weighted role in the lives of citizens all across the world. People are continuing to lose their loved ones due to gun violence or to the draw of performing acts of gun violence themselves. This issue is deep-rooted and virtually untraceable until we see it on the news. Current movements happening all across the US, such as the Black Lives Matter movement, for instance, are often the ones that draw most attention to the issue of gun violence. But the global impact of gun violence on marginalized communities often escapes our grasp. Throughout the world, families are not having access to proper medical care because of their way of life being heavily structured around the enforcement of guns on everyday citizens, impacting the livelihoods of all those that are involved or not involved in the direct violence. We are seeing this impact in children in many communities globally, as children are forced to take up arms in exchange for the safety of their families. This deep-rooted cause of gun violence and its unprecedented effects need immediate action and awareness as a global threat, rather than one that is just seen as centered in different parts of the world. Many factors lead to gun violence, and its many more dehumanizing effects need attention now. Gun crime kills about 250,000 people a year and injures many, many more. However, the proliferation of civilian gun arsenals isn't likely to slow down anytime soon. Researchers from the Graduate Institute of International Studies in Geneva estimated that civilians own about 650 million firearms, from handguns to assault rifles worldwide, which is about 75% of the world's 875 million known total. Furthermore, they attest that there's a variety of factors behind the increase in gun ownership among civilians. The main one is generally increasing wealth in some parts of the world that make it able for people to buy weapons, and the corresponding failure of many of these states to provide for the security of individuals and their community. This leads to raising insecurity in urban zones, especially parts of Africa and in Latin America. In summary, the report says that large-scale urbanization tends to be associated with increased rates of armed violence, and that is often coupled with decreasing levels of public safety. In the long run, this poses serious challenges to the provision of security and justice. Earlier, I described how certain communities across the globe are disproportionately affected by the atrocities of gun violence. Africa specifically is estimated to contain 40% of all active child soldiers globally. In addition to that, more than 50% of the population in many African conflict or post-conflict zones consists of children younger than 18 years old. The Ugandan Lord's Resistance Army, for example, is commonly known for abducting children from their homes. According to the 2008 Global Report on Child Soldiers by the Coalition to Stop the Use of Child Soldiers, the LRA has abducted 25,000 children since the 1980s. Children in the LRA are forced to participate in combat and to carry out raids, even kill and mutilate other child soldiers and civilians, and loot and burn houses. It comes at no surprise that the physical and mental well-being of these children is being constantly jeopardized to the point where the child themselves is no longer looked upon as such. The introduction of gun violence, or any violence for that matter, at a young age can be incredibly detrimental to the upbringing and livelihood of children and adolescents. Horribly enough, despite the laws set by the Ugandan government to restrict gun ownership and use, terrorist groups such as these are not likely to see a decline in the coming years, especially if the wealth gap continues to grow, finally leading to the disproportionately less medical care and attention for these areas, continuing the cycle of gun violence and abduction of children to be recruited as child soldiers. This trend is not selective to just Uganda or just Africa or just the United States. The proliferation of firearms has the far-reaching effect of taking the lives of children and families globally. What we see on one side of the coin, the things that we see on the news or on our phones, doesn't allow transparency to the other side, the side where the global impact of gun violence that may never come to our attention in a lifespan appears. Proper government regulation of firearms should be the top priority of developing nations across the globe and should be held to an equally high priority in developed nations as well. Attention to this issue is of utmost importance, and anger is necessary. Gun violence is a global threat that should not be ignored simply because it isn't talked about or prioritized. But I hope soon that it might be easier to flip the coin and see both sides. Here are my sources that I used. And I'd like to start off by saying thank you to the Global Health Leaders Conference at Johns Hopkins University for this opportunity. I learned so much from this entire conference about global health, and it really opened my eyes to different career pathways. So I'm really thankful for that. Thank you also to my dear friends and family for pushing me to be my best and to try my hardest at everything. Thank you to my fellow student advocates for being brave and revolutionary in your own ways. Thank you to Celeste, Marco, and Melody at Students Demand Action for your overwhelming support and encouraging me to step out of my comfort zone and talk about and learn about issues that are often silenced. Finally, thank you to all of those who are listening to this presentation today. I wish you the best on your journey as curious navigators of new ideas and encourage you to seek out the unseen. Here's my contact information. Feel free to email me or message me on Instagram, and have a great day.